Today is October 10th. Nope, it's November 10th, 2022. Start again. It's November 10th, 2022. And I have the honor and privilege of interviewing Dr. Gladys Taylor McGarey. Dr. Gladys is widely known as the mother of holistic medicine in the United States. I've known Gladys since the early 70s when I became close friends with her son, David. And I understand you're celebrating your 102nd birthday.
Yes.
This Saturday and at the end of the month.
Right.
So let's go back 102 years and tell me, Gladys, where were you born and when were you born?
I was born in Fatehgarh, northern India, 1920 at 7:30 p.m. And it's the part of it. Well, there was a hospital there that my mother wanted to be at when I was born. So it was my birth history is a long, very complicated story because my mother had postpartum hemorrhage, postpartum sepsis.
Wow.
She was unable to nurse me. She nursed all the other 4 children. But so I had to be, we had no nursing bottles for me when I was born. So my dad had to go to the bazaar and buy a little metal teapot and tied the end of a medicine dropper on that. And I drank buffalo's milk out of that.
And where exactly in India is it?
Northern India, just 24 miles from the Taj Mahal.
Wow.
From Agra.
Okay.
And but where we were living, where the family was living before that, was up at Roorkee, which is at that point it was Uttar Pradesh, but that was 100 miles north of New Delhi.
Right.
And so the trip down to the hospital is, my mother has a little tiny diary in which she wrote every day.
Wow.
of her life.
So wait, so they went down to the hospital to have the birth.
To have me born.
But then they went back to Roorkee where they were living.
Right.
So you were actually living in Roorkee, north of Delhi.
Yes, and the work that my parents were doing was in Roorkee and in the jungles beyond and above that, which took them into the foothills of the Himalayas. So we spent winter months in those jungles where my parents took their medical work back into the villages where nobody had been. And in fact, we were so strange as white people in some of those places that I can remember as a child having people come up and rub my arms just to see if that color would come off. And they had kind of theories about how come we're white. It was very unusual for them in those areas of the jungle. They knew a lot about the animals all around, but they didn't know much about, they didn't know anything about the
outside world
beyond that.
Gladys, what's your earliest memory? Like the first memory as a child?
My first memory as a child, I have so many good ones. I remember...
your earliest one, like the first thing you remember.
I'm trying to go back. I remember that I was very sick when I was 2.
Wow.
I had malarial hepatitis.
Wow.
And I remember that my family, my mother and dad were very, very concerned because, you had no, aside from the quinine, which they had to give me, but aside from that, there was nothing to do about it. No ice water, no IVs, no oxygen, no nothing.
The 1920s.
Yeah. And so...
so you remember that from being 2? That's
well,
amazing.
I remember You know, it's hard to say whether you remember the stories about it or you
Right.
remember actually, but I can visualize
Sure.
very clearly feeling very isolated and yet very enclosed.
Right.
It was because I was under netting, the mosquito netting
Right.
was over my bed, and so. But that is a vivid memory. But then I remember my sister and I slept in the same bed, and when she would go to bed, she'd lie down and say, and she'd cross her arms and she'd quietly say, "Now I'm going to go," and she'd find the same place like Baghdad, and then she'd fall asleep and she would dream whatever it was, and I would, you know, cuddle up next to her and say, "Now I'm going to go someplace," and then I'd spend the night trying to get there. So I was always falling out of bed. I remember falling out of bed when I was very young, but falling out of bed when I was 10 or 12 or something, you know. It was, my night times were trips.
Right, falling. Do you remember what your childhood was like before you started going to school, so your early years?
Oh, I loved it.
So you're living in Roorkee.
I was living in Roorkee and in the villages.
Right.
Now, the village story is wonderful. We had our family tent, and in the family tent, my dad and mother and Margaret and I and my youngest brother slept, but we also ate and had a living room in our family tent. And then my two older brothers had their own tent. But that was home to us, and every 2 weeks or 10 days, we moved from one village to the next, about 10 miles, 12 miles away, back into the village, into the jungles. And the stories from those years are like my second brother, Carl. When he was 8 months old, my parents used to, at night, take their lantern lectures. They had a sheet that they put up, and they had this camera that showed pictures, Bible pictures, you know,
Mm-hmm.
pictures of Bible stories. And they would go into the village, and the people had never seen anything like this.
Now, when you say it was a camera, was it a projector? Or
Projector.
like some kind of movie projector?
No, it wasn't a movie.
Like
It was
slide projector?
Slide projector.
Okay.
And they would tell these stories about and so for the first time, the village people saw something that they just couldn't believe, and they would walk around the projector and they'd walk around the whole thing trying to find who's talking and so on. But it was an amazing thing for the people. But this one night, we were in this one village in the middle of the jungle, and my parents had taken the lecture into the village,
Mm-hmm.
and our ayah was there with my two older brothers. John was in the top deck of the double-decker bed, and Carl was in the bottom. And the ayah got the boys to sleep. Carl was 8 months old. And then she leaned back against my mother's bed, the cot, which was next to Carl's, and was wakened because the bed was shaking. When she turned around, there was a she-wolf with her mouth open over Carl's head, just ready to pick him up.
Wow.
Now these stories happen in India, the newspaper stories, so it's real. The Ramesh Narima story and so on, these are real stories. So she picked, the sun helmets were on the trunk nearby, she threw that. The wolf didn't, just lifted her head up and kind of looked at her and said, "Yeah, right." And then she began yelling, and our big dogs, Dad had trained these beautiful black labs for hunting dogs.
Mm-hmm.
And the dogs began coming, and the wolf went out the back of the tent.
Jeez.
So that by the time my parents got back, the camp was in a big uproar, and they're telling what was going on, and my mother says to my dad, "That thing's been coming in here the last 2 nights."
Mm.
And now my mother was 5'1", my dad was 6 foot. She was a little woman, and he said, "What? Why didn't you tell me?" She said, "You wouldn't have believed me." And he said, "Well, what'd you do?" She says, "I picked up a pillow and I shoved it out the back of the tent. I wasn't going to let that thing have my baby." Now, this is the kind of courage this little woman had.
Wow.
And so...
What was her name?
Well, Elizabeth, but she was called Beth.
Beth.
And so my dad knew then that wolf would be back.
Mm.
So everybody went to bed, and he sat in front of the tent with his gun ready. But we had a statement in our family that you never pulled a trigger until you stopped and looked at the other side to make sure there wasn't something. Well, the Bible woman's tent was in the other side, so that moment of hesitation, the wolf got spooked.
Mm.
And so she went to the back of the tent, and then my dad went to the back of the tent, and she came so they did this back and forth for a while, and then she left. The next day they pulled up camp because he knew that she would be coming back until she got what she was looking for.
Now, how many children were there?
5.
And you're what number?
I'm number 4.
You're number 4. Who were the other ones? There's
John was the oldest.
right.
Carl was the next.
Right.
Margaret was next, and then me, and then Gordon.
Right. And your father's name is
John Calvin.
John Calvin.
Uh-huh.
And he named it. So how long had he been in? They were missionaries, right?
They were medical missionaries. They were both osteopaths. They were
Right.
taught by A.T. Still, the man who started osteopathy
Mm-hmm.
in Kirksville. And Dad graduated in 1912, and my mother graduated in 1913.
Mm-hmm.
And how they got into it, there are all kinds of interesting stories there. But they went to, the interesting thing was the mission boards were not sending osteopaths out. I mean, it was not considered. You had to be an allopathic physician in order to get the opportunity to
Sure.
go on as a missionary. So my dad had to go to, he finished the osteopathic training, and then they went to Los Angeles, and he got training in ophthalmology.
Mm-hmm.
And so he had both an MD and a DO license, and that's what allowed him to go to India.
Okay.
So, but my mother, who was an osteopath and as well qualified as anybody, had to go along sort of as his baggage.
Right.
She wasn't. But then they were on the same passport and everything. That's
Right.
interesting.
Do you have remember much more about your family life, or like how many? To what year were you in India, and what was your
I was in India. Well, yeah, I was in India until I was 15.
Right.
But they had a furlough when I was 10, and we were in the States.
Mm-hmm.
But I consider my childhood sort of in two pieces.
Mm-hmm.
The first was being free to run and play in the jungle and play with the Indian kids. I knew Hindustani before I knew English, and we were, as we went into each village, I had a whole bunch of people that I could talk with and play with, and I could get in and out of places that, it was wonderful. I felt like I was free, and I was able to do almost anything that I could, and I had a group of people, little people that were with me.
Mm-hmm.
In fact, if I saw a baby that I thought needed help, I could get the permission from the mother to take that baby to my mother and have it taken care of.
Wow.
So it was that kind, and I knew when I was 2 that I was not that I was going to be a doctor, but I let the family know that I was a doctor.
Mm-hmm.
And so that was great. And I have just wonderful memories about that time. It's just a sort of the great time in my life.
Mm-hmm.
And the songs that I learned and all of that kind of thing. But when I started school,
At what
everything
age?
changed.
What age was that?
6, I
6,
guess,
yeah.
you know. Went to Woodstock School up in the Himalayas. It was a school that was created for children of missionary parents 200 years prior to when we were there.
Right.
So, and my mother had our home was up in the Himalayas, and my dad bought a house, and we lived there when we were going to school. So I started.
Now, was Woodstock in a different city?
Woodstock was in Landauer, Missouri.
Okay.
And Missouri was the state, Landauer was the city, and Woodstock was this mission school that all of us went to. Nehru's children went to it. There was a prince that was in my class in 3rd grade.
How far was that from the place where you grew up?
Well, our home was 7,500 feet high. The school was 1,000 feet lower, and a mile. It was the exact. So, but we would just run down that. We climbed those hills like goats.
Right, but it wasn't far from where you grew up.
No, well, where we were in Roorkee was down probably at least 100 miles south of Dehradun.
Mm-hmm.
And Dehradun was the key city from which I don't know.
Like the regional capital, maybe.
Yeah, it must have been one of us. Then from that you went. It was in the foothills, and from that you went up into the Himalayas. So we were up in that area.
So it was higher up.
Yeah. So I was telling you.
So when you
When
started
I
school,
started school,
everything changed.
I couldn't read. I found out later I had dyslexia, severe dyslexia. The numbers, I couldn't add or subtract. The numbers were all over the page and they kept moving. The letters did the same. And my teacher thought I was really stupid. So I became the class dummy. And everybody, looked at me as the stupid one. So I learned to fight. And my brother Carl showed me how to really punch people out and all this kind of stuff. And so I was always fighting. I was fighting because thought I was stupid. I knew I wasn't stupid in my heart because until that time, until I was presented with something I had to read or add or something, I could see the pictures, I could know what was going on, I knew what the stories were all about and all that. But then I was this class dummy, enough so that I had to repeat 1st grade. So I had that same teacher for 2 years in 1st grade, and it was awful for me, except for the fact that I knew at the top of the hill where our house was, our ayah was waiting for me. Now the ayah is this wonderful, I guess you call her a nanny, but she was a wonderful person in our lives. Toothless, just couldn't read or write, nothing but pure love. But I knew the ayah would be sitting on the porch up at the house, and she'd be looking for me. And as soon as she saw my head, she'd say, "Idhar aao, come here," and she'd hold out her chadar, her headscarf, and I'd climb in there, and settle down until my world came back into focus. I have that scarf in my drawer upstairs, but it would be like the two distinct aspects of my life. This loving, caring, a wonderful process that went on at home, but just the world of attack and humiliation
That's cool.
outside of that.
So did things improve in school after
Well,
that?
I've got stories about this.
Okay.
And so that went on for 2 years. But when I went into third grade, Miss McGee saw something in me that the other teacher had not seen, or the others hadn't seen. And instead of ridiculing me, she saw that I was the one that organized the games or did something, but I was doing other things. And she appointed me class governor, so that anything that the class had to present to the student body, it was my job to do that, and I could do that. So I shifted from being the idiot person to somebody who had purpose in life in the school. In fact, there's a wonderful story. We had at one of these gatherings of the whole school body, and our class had a little play, and it was the frog jumped over the pool. And since I was the biggest one in the class now, since I'd been in it a year longer, I was the one that was chosen to jump over the pool, which was a pan of water, and I didn't have to read anything. I could memorize this, and I could do it. So it came to the point where, and I could do that. My mother created a green jump suit that I could use and everything. So the student body is there, everything's set up, and I come out, and I knew my lines, and I could say, and the frog jumped over the pool. But just as I said that, I saw my two older brothers in the front row, and that threw me off my step, and I landed in the pool. I didn't jump over it, I landed in the pool. So I'm standing in that pool, the color is fading from my suit, the green is fading out, I'm crying, I can't move, and the audience is in hysterics. They're just laughing and laughing and laughing. The teacher has to finally come out and take me off of the stage. So I get home, and we're at the dinner table, and my brothers are telling this story, and they're just cracking up. It's the funniest thing you ever saw, Mama. It's just the funniest thing. My mother let them go through their whole story, and then she says to them, I want you to, she says, all right, boys, now you've had your fun. Now what can we do as a family to help Gladys so that when she gets into trouble like this in the future, people will laugh with her and not against her? Now that's the kind of mother I had. She was so aware of what we could do and what we couldn't do.
Right.
And she was able to give us that understanding of who we were. And I can't tell you how many stages I've walked up to and tripped and fallen and gotten up and made some kind of a joke, and I immediately had the audience. So it became a talent,
right,
of how to fall properly, But so that was that. But there is another thing. When I was 9, and that's just the third grade kind of age group, I woke up, and this I remember clearly. Oh, I'm sorry. I woke up at sometime in the night, and I said to myself, Gladys, there's something really wrong in this world. Why are you always fighting? You're always fighting somebody. And do you want to keep on fighting like that? And does it make you feel good? I'm talking to myself. And then I said, no, it doesn't feel right. And then I thought, well, who do you know that doesn't fight all the time. And I thought, well, your mother. And sure enough, and then I thought, what does she do when something happens and it's not what she wants? She always could find something funny. She could always take a situation and just move it a little bit and have some humor in it. Till the day she died, she was 89, and she had fallen and fractured her knee and her ribs. And my dad and I were moving her from the gurney onto the x-ray table. And she looks up and sees the pain in our face. And she says, the old gray mare, she ain't what she used to be. And the next day she died. But it was that aspect of working with life just the way it was that was a godsend to me. I mean, sure, my dad would look at me and say, are you a quitter? And I'd say, no. So he had structure and so on that allowed me to really complete things. But my mother's ability to take life and look at it in a way that was just different enough to give it more livelihood and more juice saved me. Because then I thought, well, you can do that. You can be more like Mama and less like whatever you thought you were doing before.
Right.
So that by the time I graduated from high school, I was considered the class clown. These are points of passage in my life.
You mentioned your IU. Were there any other, that she was so warm and loving, were there other people in your childhood that you remember that had a big influence on you other than your parents?
Dar and Aya were a couple. He was our cook, and she was the Aya. And they were, when my parents arrived in Roorkee, they were one of their first converts, of people who became Christians and became part of it. And they were part of the family, absolutely part of the family. In fact, when I had the mumps hepatitis, when I was young, it was the Aya who was always there. Mom had to do things, but the Aya was always there. And it was that kind of total dedication. But the Dar, the cook, he was a clown, and he and I were just really good buddies. He told me that, well, when my mother went into labor, they were at the Taj Mahal, and they had to get into the Model T Ford and get to the hospital, which was 24 miles away. But Dar had been sent into the bazaar to get food for the trip. And when he got back, they were gone. So then he had to. So his story to me was, and he would tell me this story repeatedly. He'd say, now you have to understand that I know how you got born, and the story that they tell is different from that, but the one that is right is this one. When they sent me off into the bazaar in Agra, and I came back and they weren't there, I had to run for 24 miles to get to the hospital in time for Yuri to be born. But he said, I was running through the wheat fields and I heard what sounded like something, a baby or something. And he says, I looked down and into the wheat field, there you were, a Nunga Punga baby lying there crying. And I picked you up and I ran with you and I got there just when they said you were born. And they think that you came in, the story that they're telling you, but the story that you and I have is that this is the way it happened.
That's the real story.
So as a little kid, I was a very precious being to Dar and Aya. So they were great. And then there were people that came in and out, like there was this man by the name of Sadhu Sundar Singh, Sadhu Sundar Singh was a Christian sadhu who had come from a Brahmin home and converted to Christianity and spent his life traveling India and around the world. At that time, he was really well known in different parts of the world where he would go and I know the mission would take him somewhere. He wasn't connected to any missionary. He was a solar person going around spreading the message of Christianity the way he saw it and the way he understood it. And I can remember very clearly, he would come into camp, just show up, and Sadhu Sundar Singh would be there. And we just loved it because there was something about him that just wanted us to be where he was. And I don't know which one of us kids it was, but the story in the family is that he was there for a week or so at one of our camps, and then he disappeared. So it's how he traveled the world. And he didn't take anything with him. He just had sandals and traveled. And he was dressed in saffron robes and so on. But the child in our family woke up one morning and said, and Sadhu Sundar Singh was gone, and looked around and said, "Where did Jesus go?" I mean, it was that kind of energy that he had. And it was such a, as a child, it felt like such a safe place to be near Sadhu Sundar Singh. There are books that have been written about him and so on. Amazing, amazing man.
Do you remember some of the activities you did as a child that you enjoyed? Or?
Oh, sure. There were games like kabaddi, which is you had sides and there was a piece of wood in the center and the person's side you had to hit that and you get kabaddi get back and forth like that. That was great. And then we played jacks and we played hopscotch and we played jump rope. We were just really a lot of jump rope. But we climbed trees and hills and everything like. But I remember this is a very clear memory. I must have been, 7 or, no, maybe 8, I don't know, in that age group. Up in the Himalayas, and I came across an oak tree that was growing straight out of the mountain, just straight out of the mountain, and it was a young oak. The roots are strong in the rock, but it was a young oak, just enough that I could put my arms around it. And I climbed up onto that oak, and I started moving forward because I was looking for something. I didn't know what I was looking for. And I scooted forward, and I scooted forward, so that now I was clutching this trunk of this little tree and looking down 1,000 feet to the ground. So I'm way out on this little tree, and I'm still looking for something. And then the leaves parted sort of, and I could see, and I saw what I was looking for. And I didn't know what it was, but I was looking for the horizon. But when I saw the horizon, it was like, okay. I don't know, to this day, I don't know what the horizon meant to me at that point. But at that point, that's what I was looking for. I knew that if my mother knew I was doing this, she'd have killed me. But then I gradually moved back off the trunk. I knew I couldn't wiggle. I couldn't move around because I would fall. But I remember that. And so if things got kind of bad or out of focus or something, I'd go to my tree.
Let me ask you, what was your religious life growing up? So your parents were medical missionaries. So
Oh, well, we
well,
had
what type of missionaries were? Which type of Christianity?
Reformed Presbyterian.
Right. And
And it was the New Light Reform, not the Old Light Reform.
okay.
But we had so many different Presbyterian groups out there in school that it was amazing. You know, British. Anyway, I won't even go into that. But it was Presbyterian, and I loved the stories in the Bible. I knew all those stories. I knew them in English. I knew in Hindustani, and we had this wonderful helper in the kitchen by the name of Shadullah, and he had a beautiful singing voice.
Right.
So when my folks would take lantern lectures into the villages, Shadullah would go with them, and he would sing, and he would sing like the story of the prodigal son, and but he could. Yeah, I remember Shadullah singing. And he was always singing. He had tunes that he made up himself, I'm sure. I never heard it. Anyway, yeah.
You mentioned in school that you became like the governess of your class. How did you end up doing academically up until age 15 or up until you left? Did you end up doing better, or how did it go the rest of your school time?
I think I remember. Let me take you forward 50 years. But when we started the American, this ties in.
Okay.
When we started the American Holistic Medical Association, I remember one time being at a table, and there were 10 of us physicians around the table, MDs, DOs, sitting around the table. And as we got to talking, we realized that out of the 10 of us, 6 of us were severely dyslexic.
Wow.
Jerry Jimpolsky and people like that. And all of us looked at each other and we said, how did we do it? And none of us could tell each other how we did it. But somehow we learned to read.
Right.
Somehow we learned to gather the information out of the written word in a way that we could understand it and then work with it. Because I couldn't have gotten through medical school. They couldn't have, we all said that. It couldn't have happened.
Right.
Fortunately, and this is an offside, but we're now, the Foundation for Living Medicine is working with a friend and patient of ours who is doing research on dyslexia because he had it. And 2 years ago, just in the middle of the COVID thing, he had a stroke, and when the stroke healed from the effects of the stroke pretty well, he was able to read perfectly.
Wow.
So we're doing research he's doing a whole research project on what happened, because what they found out, he went to Mayo and they found that his stroke was in the lower brain. It wasn't in the head, in the brain of the head. So there's some really interesting research going on there. I don't know, nothing's ready to be published or anything yet, but we've just started doing this. He'll be at the birthday party.
So you said you were in India till you were 15.
Yeah.
Where did you go from there?
I came to the States and went to Muskingum College in Ohio.
Okay.
Right.
Why Ohio?
Because my brothers and my sisters had gone there, and my sister was still there. She was
So you're number
4.
Number 4. So the 3 of them preceded you.
Yeah.
To the same school.
Yeah.
It's called
And John Glenn was in my class. So
really?
Yeah.
John Glenn. Now what's the name of the school again?
It's Muskingum College.
Muskingum College.
It's now Muskingum University in New Concord, Ohio.
Right. So when you went there, did you start university, or were you still in high school?
No, I was just finished. Yeah. Well, I was 15, but I became 16
Right.
when I really started. So I left India when I was 15. I don't know, I'm mixed up on dates. Decades come together. But I was 16 when I had my birthday that year.
Mm-hmm.
So anyway, what'd you ask me?
About where you went to school. So
yeah, well, Muskingum was Muskingum College, and it was a great place.
So when you started there, was Muskingum? You had finished high school then?
No, I didn't graduate from high school
Right.
because we went to school in the summertime in
Right.
India, and I had to leave in order to get into college. So it instead of graduating from my class in India,
Mm-hmm.
which would have been in November,
Right.
I came to the States in July because I had to get into college in
Right.
September. So it was
So you were young when you started college.
Yeah.
So younger
Yeah.
than
Yeah.
now you have to be like 18 or something. So you were quite young starting. University.
I was one of the youngest ones. Yeah.
And your brothers, you're saying, preceded you and went to the same college.
Oh, they had gone with. Yeah, they had graduated before we, and my sister was still there.
Right.
She's in her junior year.
Right. So what was that like? So all of a sudden you've lived in India for the first 15 years of your life, and you're in this American
no man's land for me. I knew none of the movie stars. I knew the music didn't make much sense.
So it was a real culture shock.
Oh, real. In fact, the first Thanksgiving that I was there, everybody else, of course, was going home for Thanksgiving, and I was going to go home as my roommate. But we were sitting around the table, and the girls asked me, they said, well, Gladys, what did you do for Thanksgiving in India? And I said, well, my dad went out and shot a peacock, and they got up and left the table. And I thought, now what did I do? I finally realized that either I was telling a lie or they just couldn't put their mind around it.
Right.
But it was that kind of experience. Fortunately, there was another young woman about the same age who had just come over from Poland.
Right.
And she was as disoriented and everything as but we became really, really good friends. But I was an oddity,
Sure. You were the woman out, or someone very different.
Doing something in India.
How big a university is it? Is it small?
Oh no! Well, at that time there were I think 700 students.
So maybe
it's much larger now.
So each class was maybe 250.
But one of the things that was weird, you see that that leopard that's behind you?
Yeah.
That's the leopard that I shot, and so I had that skin, and stuff like that. The things that I had were so different from the things that the other girls had.
Was it a girls' school or was it co-ed?
No, it's co-ed.
And how did you do? Like, even though you were the man out and it was culture shock, how did you do?
Oh, I had to learn to fit in. I mean, I had to learn things.
So socially you had a lot to learn, but how did you do also academically? Was it?
Oh yeah, I did fine.
It was fine.
I was able to graduate in 4 years and get into medical school.
So academically was easier than socially, in terms of how
yeah. The last 2 years were much better because the first 2 years the students were young. I was young, and all trying to learn how to deal with life and other kinds of people and that kind of thing. So it was the first 2 years were difficult, but the last 2 years were just fine.
And were there certain things that you were involved in university, like certain activities or clubs or interests?
Well, there was a social club that was called the FAD Club that was where we lived the last 2 years too, and that made a lot of difference. But um, and we had a Christian Endeavor group
Right.
that I led a lot of the time, and but I was really focused on learning the stuff I needed to learn to get into medical school.
So you were pretty focused that you wanted to go to medical school from the day you got there.
Yeah, yeah.
And I know you have to get, good grades and do well to get into medical school.
Yeah. You at least have to pass.
These days more than that. But...
So I got into medical school
And so where did you go?
Then I went to the women's medical in Philadelphia.
And was that where you wanted to go, or is that?
It's where I got in.
That's where you got in.
I mean, you go where you get in. But yes, it was, interestingly enough, I started medical school.
What age were you?
In September of 1941,
right.
and the war broke out in December. So my whole medical career was during World War II.
Wow. Now, so you were born in 2020. So in 1941, you were 21.
Mm-hmm.
So you was young to start medical school.
Yeah.
Very young. And it was a 4-year medical school.
Yeah.
And so you were there during the war years.
It was but during that time, everything was mixed up.
Mm-hmm.
And sometimes the courses that you were taking had to be postponed and so on and so forth. So actually, I graduated in 46.
So it took 5 years.
Yeah.
And what do you remember from your medical school days? Do you, it was during the war, so it must have
Well, the nice thing was that just after I graduated from college, I met the man that I married, Bill McGarey, at a church meeting where he was applying for some help getting into seminary. Financial help.
Mm-hmm.
And I was doing the same for medical school.
And was he at your university?
No, he was in Cincinnati, where
Okay.
my mother's family was, and so in that church, we were the two young people that were at the meeting that were.
So you met at a church meeting, at a church event.
Yeah, and so we started corresponding and fell in love and got married in 1943.
So this is during medical school.
During medical school, he got into the V12 program, and
which is what?
The Navy created a program of training physicians,
right?
So that they had the physicians, and so he started in Cincinnati the year after I started medical school. So he had to go through some training for the
Army
V12, and then
right.
he was in the V12. So anyway, he was in Cincinnati in medical school, and I was in Philadelphia in medical school.
But isn't that nearby?
No, and it was on. The only way of getting back and forth was by train.
Right.
And I can remember getting on the train to see Bill probably for Christmas time or something, and having gone through 2 weeks of exams and so on, so I was totally sleep deprived. And I got on the train, and all the seats were taken with soldiers, just packed with soldiers. And the only seat I could find was between cars. I sat on my suitcase, and I thought, well, all these young guys running back and forth and just getting back. So I pulled out my knitting, and I got my knitting needles on my knees, pointing up, and I fell asleep on the suitcase in
between the cars.
In the train, because I was just, I was so exhausted. Anyway, yeah, it was really interesting. And the thing was that in this school, the emphasis was that we had to be smarter and better at doing things than men because we were going to be, our standards were different, you know.
So the medical school was for women
Yeah,
that you went to?
it was the only medical school in the country at that time
For
for women
in the whole country?
in the whole country.
Wow.
And there were 50 students when we started, and only 25 of us graduated.
Wow.
Because they were so strict and they were so, in fact, the dean really didn't think that I belonged. She sent me to the psychiatrist, and I came back, and the psychiatrist gave me a decent report as far as my IQ and stuff was concerned, and she wouldn't believe it. So, you know, my dyslexia carried through in strange ways.
Right.
You know, how could I possibly have a decent IQ if, you know, if I couldn't do this, that, and the other thing?
So when you married Bill, and you were, how old were you?
23.
And he was?
24.
24. And so you were, it was during medical school, like your third year, and he was in this V12 program.
Yeah.
So you finished medical school. When did you actually get to live together?
Well, because of the way the school year was,
right,
I graduated in January of 46,
mm-hmm.
and then he graduated in February of 40. I don't know.
After,
you know, yeah, a year later, and so no, it was a year later because when I graduated, this was interesting. I got an internship at Deaconess Hospital in Cincinnati.
Right.
And they'd never had a woman intern at that hospital.
And this was close to where he was in Cincinnati, right?
Yeah, he was at the University of Cincinnati.
Right, but it was in the same city at least.
Yeah, but I was, yeah. We had an apartment.
Right, so you're living together then.
Right. And so then, anyway, but I had this internship at the hospital where they had never had a woman intern before, so they had no place for me to stay when I was on call. So I had the x-ray table and a blanket and a pillow. And the senior resident on surgery, really, I think part of his basic understanding of medicine was, number one, women didn't belong in medical school, and number two, pregnant women didn't, because then I was pregnant with Carl.
Right.
So he gave me the most difficult operations to be an assistant on.
Sure, it was like hazing.
Yeah, and the ones that started the earliest, which meant that I was going into surgery before anybody could get any breakfast. So I had to, because the way he'd have the schedule starting at 7 o'clock, and the cafeteria would open at 8. Mm-hmm. So there was no way I could get anything. So in my heart and mind, I knew that this baby and I had an uphill battle. And that this was going to be just, we were just going to hang in there. But you know, an interesting thing happened. And if he could find a difficult orthopedic case, that's the one he would
give to you
and put me in on. Well, one day the schedule started changing, and I wasn't changing it, and he's mad at me and saying, "Why are you changing the schedule?" And I'm saying, "I'm not." But then one night, when the schedule change had started, I was on call, and I got a call in the middle of the night, and I walk out into the hall where the blackboard, which had the schedule on it, was there, and little Lucille, who was a little maid on our floor, had pulled a chair up, and she was erasing Carl Ferber's name at the top and putting my name up there and putting his name down below. So I've had these people who show up in my life, like my Aya and my mother, who actually rescue me.
Right.
Because here I am, and she sees what's happening, and knows what's happening, and takes the risk of doing that, of changing. And so my son, I carried him to term, and he became an orthopedic surgeon. Go figure.
What did you do your residency in? Was it in orthopedics?
No, it was in surgery, but I was saying he gave me all the hard orthopedic cases.
So you did a residency to become an orthopedic?
No.
No, I mean to do surgery, sorry.
Yeah.
That was your residency?
No, it was a general practice.
General, okay.
Because I was very interested in birthing and all of that. So, no, it was a general practice. I was a family doc.
Right, but that's what you did your residency in,
yeah.
Was in family.
Yeah.
And so during this time that you're a resident, did Bill finish, or? Yeah,
well, Carl was 8 months old when Bill graduated from medical school.
Right.
Yeah.
And then did you stay in Cincinnati, or?
No, just after Bill graduated, we went up to Wellsville, Ohio, which was his hometown.
Right.
And that was an experience. And we were there for 9 years.
Oh, that's a long time.
Yeah, and my next three.
No. And why Wellsville? He was from there.
He was from there, and it was easy to start in there, except they'd never had a woman doctor in town either.
And how small is Wellsville?
Well, it was right near Pittsburgh.
Okay.
Right across the river from Wheeling, West Virginia, and Pittsburgh,
Now, Wellsville, is that in Ohio, or where is it?
Ohio.
That's Ohio.
Tri-state area up there, yeah.
And was he, did he finish a residency when or was he?
Well, we were there in Cincinnati for a year until he was finished.
Right.
And then, yeah.
And you both did family medicine in Wellsville?
Yeah, yeah.
And did you practice together?
Yeah.
And did you have your own?
Had our own office.
Your own office?
Until he was called back into the Korean War.
Okay, now don't go there yet. So you're there 9 years.
Yeah.
And you have in those 9 years, how many kids did you have?
4.
So you had Carl,
John, Ann Leah, and Bob.
Ann Leah and Bob. And
I had 4 in 4 years. And that, I see,
4 in 4 years, or 4 in?
Well,
had to be more.
A stretch of 4 years.
Right.
And the thing was that people would say to me, we'd think, I had a lot of the townspeople say, we'd think you above all people would know how not to have babies. And I'd say to them, well, did you ever think that I wanted them? And no, well, I do. And my theory was, I'm in this town where people just don't have much of anything. One of my patients I helped her birth her 22nd child.
Wow.
And it was the poorest family in town. She died the next year. They had nothing, and there were a lot of these coal mining kind of people, people who had nothing. Wonderful people. A lot of them are just great people, but they just had very little education, very little of anything, but just survival.
So during those 9 years, you had your first 4 kids, and you started your medical career as a family doc.
Right.
And so what was it like medically practicing there? Was it, so you had, your mother and you're a doctor?
Well, and then Bill gets called back into the service, and then I'm the doctor. So now I'm the doctor for 9,000 people. And and I still have 4 kids.
Right.
But I had a wonderful German woman doctor, a woman who just took over. She would just help me. It was amazing. But I got the mumps and had mumps nephritis and ended up in the hospital. And there was no way that the people would leave me alone. They'd come up the back steps and come into my room for consultation. So
while you were in the hospital.
Well, I was in the hospital. So the doctors, Dr. Edith and Bill Gilmore, Edith was an OBGYN and Bill was a surgeon at the hospital there. They took me to their home. We were good friends. Took me to their home and connected the IV with the curtain rod, and they took care of me in their home that way because I couldn't get away from the patients.
See.
I mean, once they accepted me, it was, it took a while. It took about 2 years before the town really respected the fact that.
But once they did, they couldn't get enough.
Yeah, and there wasn't anybody else there.
That's right.
Practically. I mean, there were 2 other doctors, but one of them had a heart attack, and the other one was a refugee from Latvia, and he had post-traumatic stress, and he couldn't get out at night. So,
right.
But I had all kinds of.
So during those 9 years, you said Bill was called up to Korea to go into the war? Was that during the time you're in Wellsville?
Yeah.
And then he came back.
Then he came back, and we came to Phoenix.
So what year was that you came to?
1955.
1955. And when you came to Phoenix, did you move in to the house in Lafayette, or did you?
No, we came to a house on Coulter.
Coulter.
So actually, they were just building Uptown Plaza.
Right.
And it's just 3 blocks,
And how long did you stay there?
3 years.
Okay.
Helene was born there.
Okay.
And at home. And then when she was 18 months old, we moved to Lafayette.
So that would have been 58. 58.
And she was so busy, and Lafayette was so big, and it was summertime, and I couldn't keep track of her, so I pinned a bell on her diaper to keep track of her. But I had the other kids who helped keep track of her.
And I know your last kid must have been born in 1960 because it's the same year I was born.
Yeah.
And he was born in, David would have been born in the house or in the house?
In the house.
In the house.
Mm-hmm. And then the fun started. David stories,
So when you moved to Phoenix, did you and Bill start a medical practice together?
Yep.
And where was that in?
On 40th Street in Thomas.
And you started it. Was that the ARE clinic or?
No, we became the ARE clinic
later
in 49 as officially. But in the meantime, we had built our office down on just off of Indian School on 40th Street.
Mm-hmm.
And that's where the ARE clinic started.
And tell me about how you got involved with the ARE. Tell us about the ARE, what it stands for, and how all that started.
It stands for the Association for Research and Enlightenment.
Right.
And it's the work that Edgar Cayce did in medicine. The readings that he gave, they're called medical readings. And so that was, there's, that's all been written up and everything. But when, let's see, Helene was just born, and Hugh Lynn Cayce came to town.
This is his son.
His son, yeah.
Edgar Cayce's son.
And we knew that we had just read There's a River, which is the introductory book that he has. And so we went to hear him talk, and were so captivated with what he said that after the talk we went to a restaurant on 16th Street and 7th Street, 16th and 7th, and stayed until midnight, and they kicked us out. But that was our start of the relationship with the ARE, and then Bill began writing articles for them, and the whole holistic movement started from that point on.
So what's the relationship between the holistic movement and the ARE? How do they intertwine?
Okay, therein lies another story. But let me tell you just quickly.
That's okay.
Before that, when we were on Coulter also, we met Milton Erickson.
Right.
And when I was pregnant with Helene, there were 6 of us that met Milton Erickson in our living room, and talked about the stuff that Milton was doing with hypnosis.
Mm-hmm.
And that was the start of the American Society for Hypnosis. I'll come up with the title. It's still going, but it was Milton's the start of his getting his word out,
Mm-hmm.
so that people could do it. And so I'll think of the title for that. I can't come up with it now. But anyway, during that time, and we got interested in the ARE, and Bill was writing articles, and then we decided that we needed to have our own office with help, and so we built, with Francis Sirikowski and Eleanor Schaefer, we built the building where the ARE clinic started,
Mm-hmm.
on corner of 40th and Indian School. But we didn't become the ARE clinic until 1969, when Bill and I were on a tour to Israel.
Mm-hmm.
And we had been working, Bill had been writing articles and all of that. But we were working, and we went when we were in Israel, we went to a kibbutz,
Mm-hmm.
and we were so impressed with the way they were doing things. I mean, everybody had a job. Every child knew what they were supposed to, it was so amazing the way these kibbutzes worked, that we said, that's the kind of thing we're thinking of. And so we came back and changed the name of our Olive Tree Medical Group to the ARE Clinic. And so that's when that started. But in the meantime, acupuncture, how that got started, Bill was writing a monthly newsletter that went around to physicians. A lot of them were people who were interested with the Edgar Casey work, but
Mm-hmm.
the people, anybody could sign up and be on the mailing list. And one day we got a letter from a mailman in Maine, and he said that, I got your pathways to health, and you were talking about using a castor oil pack on your throat for a sore throat. And he said, I had a sore throat. But he said, for 4 months, I had an injury to my ankle, and it was really bad. He said nobody could figure out what was going on. I'd gone to doctor after doctor, and I was getting no better.
Mm-hmm.
But I put the castor oil pack on my neck, and my ankle cleared up. He said, now if you can tell me why that happened, I'd be very happy. Well, Bill and I looked at each other, and we said, we don't have a clue.
Mm-hmm.
Why would that happen? So Bill wrote that up in his newsletter, and we got an answer from a doctor in Italy by the name of, I'll say, it's not. And he said, if you guys knew anything about acupuncture, you would know that the meridian that starts up right beside the nose
Mm-hmm.
and goes down the whole, goes from the neck down to the ankle and through that. So when the energy was lifted in the neck, it was cleared the other.
Mm-hmm.
And then we said, what's this stuff called acupuncture? So the
So you all of a sudden got an interest in acupuncture.
so then we began looking into the acupuncture,
Mm-hmm.
and we had the first acupuncture symposium in the United States in well, I've got the brochure. I mean,
Well, you mentioned 1969, so it might have been around then.
it was things are running together.
That's okay.
I've got it in the library here. We have the what do you call it? The brochure, not the brochure, but the one where you have all the things listed and the people who are doing these things.
Mm-hmm.
But we had this conference in Stanford,
Right.
and we had
Kind of the schedule.
280 physicians from California, and
And it was just about acupuncture?
just about acupuncture. And so that started. Nixon was just home from,
China.
yeah,
So that was in the early 70s, I remember that.
yeah. This was in '73, and I think. But anyway, I'm fading.
That's about right.
And I need more water, John. Are we about done?
It's your life story, so I would say that we're part done, but it's up to you as to whether you can.
I have to stop
Okay, we can take a break.
because there's a lot of other stuff going on too.
Just a second.